So my wife and I were getting a haircut today from one of the members of our congregation who cuts hair and styles it for a living. And we had this great conversation that brings together three of my most favorite topics I love to talk about. I love to talk about Genesis 1 and God's ongoing creation and how we participate in that, and how we are the image of God and reflect the image of God in our vocations, in our daily callings. And it's amazing how a haircut can do this, because styling hair is an interesting thing because this woman, if she had lived 200 or more years ago, she would have been like most people and would have been the wife of a farmer, or a day laborer, or someone who was a blacksmith or carpenter. And she would have spent her entire day cooking and cleaning, something like that. But since the Industrial Revolution or the fossil fuel revolution, now that we're feeding 90 some percent of the world's population rather than under 10% like it used to be, uh, she has the freedom to express herself as the image of God in her vocation, in her calling. And notice the tightrope that she walks between God's ongoing creation activity on the one hand and pride on the other hand. On the one hand, being the image of God and reflecting God's beauty on the one hand, and vanity on the other. And it's a tightrope walk between those two, uh, because that's the way it is with all sin. Sin corrupts God's goodness and God's truth. It corrupts God's beauty and turns it into idolatry and worship of something other than the one true God. Uh, so, how is it that a haircut, someone who cuts people's hair and styles it, reflects the image of God and reflects godly vocation and God's ongoing creation activity? Because this is so cool. Let's talk about the bad side, the dark side of this. So on the one side is pride, where I can look at myself and get my hair cut because I am just so amazingly awesome. And look at this. I look exactly like Thor Ragnarok. I just need to grow out my beard and get a professional stylist, and I, I cut my hair and get it styled because I am just fabulously, gloriously awesome. That's on the one hand, where what I'm doing is I'm no longer reflecting the image of God the way He intended it. So here's the image of God part. Genesis 1, 26 through 28. Read this passage. God God does this 7-day creation, and on the sixth day, He places His image in His creation to reflect what God is doing in creation, to reflect God to creation. He says, "You will rule over, have dominion over the land and the animals," not over people, over land and animals. Now, what does that look like? It looks like what God is doing on days 1 through 6. That's what the image of God is. And we're called to reflect. If you think of the image of God being like a mirror, it's a 45-degree angle that takes God's goodness, His truth, His beauty, and reflects it to the land and the animals and other people, and then reflects that back in praise to God. Okay? This is so amazingly cool. That's what it means to rule over, have dominion over creation, to be the image of God. And so, what happens when I'm proud? What I do is I take that image, that mirror, and I look at myself and I go, "Aren't I awesome? Yes, Steve, you are beautiful. Just amazingly fabulous." And if I'm a Christian, I go, "Yep, God made me beautiful and fabulous." And I kind of want to go ding, but I don't have that kind of video skill. Uh, so that's one. I'm not reflecting God's beauty to creation. I'm reflecting God's beauty back to myself. But look what happens when I am vain. I hold up a mirror like this, so I'm reflecting the world and other people's opinions back to them, where I go, "Oh, look, I'm getting my identity and my purpose and my beauty not from God to reflect to others, but from others back to themselves. And I'm getting approval from others rather than let your light so shine before others that they may see your good works and glorify God. Notice how that it reflects when people see my beautiful haircut and reflect and go, look how beautiful God's creation is. Okay. And again, this is a fine line, but I hope you see this in vocation. So that's the image of God part, right? Now, let me talk about God's creative activity, the creation activity of Genesis chapter 1. What is God doing? He's doing two basic things. He's dividing and he's naming. That is, by naming, he's giving a purpose. So he separates the darkness from the light and he names them. He says, light, you have a purpose. Darkness, you have a purpose. He separates the waters from the waters and says, you have purposes. He names them, the sky above, the land below, land and sea, you have a purpose. He names them. And that's exactly what my hair cutting stylist did. She took my hair and she goes, let me separate this and throw it over there. Let me divide it and say, no, 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 you don't serve God's purposes. Or, she separates and then she names and she goes, oh, you hair, go like this. And she names it and she gives it a purpose. But she does it in the unique way that my hair wants to go. And this is just so amazing to think about because, the hair over here, it wants to go like, poof, go out this, and all the rest of my hair wants to go like that. And so she studies the way God made my hair to be, and she separates parts from others, and she gives it order so that if I go like this with my hair, see, all I've got to do is go, here's the way God made my hair. But she had to separate this part from that and then give it order and give it direction to reflect the way God made my hair to be. And, after decades of really not knowing how my hair was supposed to go, to have someone who reflects God's image and says, basically, Steve, this is the way God made you. Let me separate this from that. Let me name this and give it order and give it direction to reflect God's beauty, whatever my age. But to say, look at the way God made you and bring out the beauty of God's creation. And that's what vocation is. It's not her, carving, I don't know if you see this, but she carved a cross into my hair. No, she didn't. She didn't, she doesn't do that to all of her clients. Like, I carved a cross into your hair because I'm a Christian. Nor does she beat people over the head with a Bible. But she's able to reflect the beauty of God's creation. And she does it in a way that's heartfelt. She studies the way God made our hair. And the way our hair, it's so wonderful to listen to her talk because she loves it. And she's free to do that in this day and age to serve people. And she just does it with a heart of generosity and goodness. It's not, hey, I'm going to try to scam you for all you're worth. But she does it freely and she does it generously. I think perhaps even a little too generously. But that's the way vocation works. It's mutual service. We pay her and she serves us, mutual service, but it's in this generous, overflowing way that brings out the beauty of God's goodness, God's ongoing creation activity, God's ongoing image ruling, giving rule and order to, in this case, my hair. And that's the way it is with all vocations. Every vocation, it separates and it brings order and brings out God's truth and goodness and beauty. And oh man, I'll stop. The Lord be with you. God's peace be with you. Amen.